him? Who wants to share? Yes.
It seems like he was very corrupt after a while.
And what do you base that on?
He had a fondness for gold rather than like relationships more. Right?
Says he kept, and yet he was rather close as to expenses and kept the gold he won in pestilences. So during a plague, he would treat people for gold. Yes.
He wasn't very religious.
He wasn't very religious. What else? Yes.
He could read people.
He could what?
Read people.
Read people. You mean like understand them or
Yeah.
their emotions?
Or, no, they're
Like
like
intelligence.
their symptoms.
Oh, their symptoms when they're sick?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. What else do you know about him? Yes.
Because of the medical terms he knew, it was kind of like a different language, so he was really good with speech,
Mm-hmm.
and he was really like smart and intelligent.
Yes, he knew his field. He knew what was there so far. Yes, Holly.
He was diet conscious.
Yeah.
Right. He was very diet conscious.
I believe it says he started in astrology.
Yeah.
He started in astrology. He knew astrology. And how did he use that in his, I think astronomy is what you want to say. How did he use his astronomy in his medical treatments? Sophie?
He looked at horoscopes and star signs for each
Okay,
patient.
he felt like there were certain times when the stars were right for certain medical treatments and sometimes when they weren't. So he combined this astronomy study that he'd done with his medicine to decide when to do certain treatments on people. How did he look? How did he dress? Who can tell me what he dressed like?
Red
dressed in-
silk fabric.
A red silk fabric.
With taffeta.
Okay, there used to be a style where you could have like, and I don't know if this is what he did, when he says he had a blood red garment slashed with bluish gray and lined with taffeta. It says that the garment was blood red, but somehow it had bluish gray in it and slashes. I think of it going like this. They also used to have a kind of sleeve that they would actually cut and you'd see a different color underneath. I don't know if they did that, but somehow there was blue-gray on his blood red garment. It was lined with taffeta. So this is a very fancy, very nice garment that he's wearing. And when it says he was rather close as to expenses, what do you think that means?
He loved money.
He did, and he was very frugal. He didn't let go of his money easily. Anything else that you picked up about this guy? Character-wise, I've heard you mention that he loved money. He wasn't very religious. You know, he liked to hold on to his money. He could take advantage of people because he would charge them gold when they were suffering in a pestilence or a plague. He had a lot of things that he believed, that he was taught, that today we would call superstitions. He saw himself somewhat as a mystic healer, don't you think? Because it says the lucky hours and the planetary degrees for making charms and magic effigies. It's almost like a little bit like witchcraft. You know, you do these magic charms and these things. So he sees himself somewhat as a mystic healer. He's very confident and quick when he makes a diagnosis. And what about his studies? Did it talk about his studies?
Astronomy.
Okay, he was well versed in Asclepius. He knew Hippocrates. Hippocrates was a Greek physician, and Rufus. So all the famous people, Galen, who set the tone for medicine for a couple thousand years, he knew what these doctors taught, and so he had studied. He had studied what was available to him. But what do we see about medicine at this time in history from this little description of this doctor?
That it wasn't just all physical stuff. They thought it was like more.
Right, it didn't involve just the physical. There were superstitions and mythical things still accepted. And Galen taught the four humors: sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and what one I'm missing, phlegmatic. He taught that each of those represented a different fluid in the body, and medicine was done that way for lots of years. That's why when they had certain sicknesses that they felt were too sanguine, they would get rid of some of the sanguine by bleeding a patient. So, anyway, that was the doctor. Did anyone get to the wife of Bath? Okay, all right. What did you guys come up with so far on the wife of Bath?
She's talking.
Okay.
She's,
Yeah, what else?
go, oh, she's comforting.
Uh-huh, she likes to comfort people.
Partially deaf.
Partially deaf, yes.
Her occupation is like a seamstress, but she's also like very professional in the art of like love
Uh-huh,
because she's had so many marriages.
right. She likes to be a matchmaker is what I got from that. Yes, Rachel.
She's a traveler.
She loves to travel.
She had a gap in her teeth.
Okay, she has a gap in her teeth, a rosy face. Do you think she was outgoing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Outgoing and talkative.
She was good on a horse.
She was a great writer, okay? And she was a cloth maker.
I don't know if anyone said this, but she's like very fashionable and sharp on like the
Right,
latest.
I mean, it describes her clothes right down to the shoes, and she is well shod and well dressed. She's handsome, according to Chaucer. Whatever her qualities are, he considers them handsome. A rosy face, and probably her biggest defect was her gap teeth, but if she looked nice in every other way, that wouldn't be so bad. And after all, every time she lost a husband, someone else was ready to marry her right away, so she must have had some appeal to men. So we know she's nicely dressed. She likes to help. She likes to laugh. I really like that about her. She laughs. She's been married 5 times. Her hat is as big as a shield. What do you think it says about her that she's so well dressed and has this huge hat on?
She likes presents, like she likes to show off. Kind of.
She likes fashion. Would you have to be, would a shy person dress that way?
Confident. She's
No, it's
No.
very like,
She's confident. She's carefully dressed and she's very confident in how she's dressed. Do you think it was common for women to travel by themselves back then
probably not.
and to be good equestrians? And she'd been married 5 times and now she's single again. She was a pretty liberal woman for that time period. Pretty outgoing. You guys did very well. I'm pleased. Okay, follow along as I read. These are my 2 favorite characters. I love these guys. Okay. A holy-minded man of good renown there was, and poor, the parson of a town. He was rich, though, in his holy thought and works. He was also a learned man, a clerk. He truly knew Christ's gospel and would preach it accurately, devoutly to his parishioners. He was gentle and wonderfully diligent and patient whenever there was adversity. So he proved in great adversity. He hated to exhort people for their tithe, to bug them about paying tithe or giving money to the church. Instead, he rather preferred giving to the poor parishioners of his area. The people were poor, he felt bad, giving sermons where he begged for tithe or offering, but he loved to give and help. From his own goods and Easter offerings, he found sufficiency in little things, so he would give from his own means to his poor parishioners. Wide was his parish, and the houses were scattered far apart, and yet, even if it was raining and thundering, he would not neglect to pay a call when someone was sick or grieving. He would go. On the remotest, whether great or small, he would call, upon his feet, and in his hand he had a stave, like a walking stick. This noble example to his sheep he gave, first following the word before he taught it. So this is the great example he gave his people. He would follow what he taught. And it was from the gospel that he learned what he taught. And he would have this little proverb that was, if gold rust, what will iron do? For if a priest who is bad, if you trust a bad priest, no wonder that a common man should rust. And shame it is to see, let me read this first. For a priest be foul in whom we trust, no wonder that a common man should rust. And shame it is to see, let priests take stock, a soiled shepherd and a snowy flock. So he's saying, if the leader is corrupt of the flock, and that's what he is, what much that hurts people. You trust them and they're crooked, they're wrong, and it's a shame. Preachers, listen, that is shameful. If you are crooked and your flock is good, if you are soiled and your flock is white. He said that a priest should give a true example as cleanliness and how a shepherd and how the sheep should live. He did not see that his position was below him, even though he was a pastor for a small town. He felt it was important work, and he would never leave his flock untended, or here it says encumbered in the mire, or run to London to earn easy bread. A pastor could go to London and sing masses for the wealthy dead and make money, but he didn't do that because he wanted to be there for his people. And he would not find some brotherhood and get enrolled. He stayed home and watched over his people so that no wolf should attack the sheep. He was always there, always diligent. He was a shepherd and no mercenary. He wanted to be a pastor, not make money was not his goal. He was not mercenary in his ministry. He was holy and virtuous, never contemptuous of sinful men. He did not look down his nose at sinners, but he looked for the good in people. He was discreet in teaching and gentle, and his business was to live what he taught and draw men to heaven by his example. Unless a man were obstinate and such, whether of high or low class, he put to sharp rebuke, to say the least. So if someone was really doing wrong and wouldn't listen to counsel, he would rebuke them. I think there never was a better priest. He sought no fanciness or glory or praise in his dealings. He was not, his feelings were given only to the people he considered nice, but to everybody. Christ and his 12 apostles and their lore is what he taught, but he followed it first himself. Okay, what do you think of this guy?
Awesome.
So
Everything the
amazing.
monk and friar are not.
Yeah, the opposite of the friar. Okay, so let's look at his brother. There was a plowman, his brother. Many a load of dung at one time or another he must have carted through the morning dew. So dung is animal waste product that you use for fertilizer. So this guy has to haul wagon loads of crap around, and but he was an honest worker, good and true. He lived in peace and he was generous to everyone, like the gospel told him to do. He loved God best with all his heart and mind, and he loved his neighbor as himself. And he didn't whine about his misfortunes, and he didn't slack off on what he needed to do, spending time feeling sorry for himself. But he steadily went about his work to thrash the corn or dig manure or make a ditch, and he would help the poor for the love of Christ and never take a penny for the poor if he could help it. And as prompt as any, he still paid his tithes even though when they were due, even though he was poor and his earnings were skimpy. He wore a tabard smock and rode a mare. Okay, what do you think of this guy?
Wow.
You know what I think of when I read about these brothers? What?
They're brothers.
They're brothers. The parson and the plowman are brothers. I think they must have had really godly parents. Do you think that?
Yeah.
They must have had parents that taught them what the truth was, and not upward mobility, that the most important thing in life was to make money and get rich and live selfishly, but parents that taught them generosity and kindness and to do whatever task was before them with all their heart, even if it's hauling manure. I mean, you know, there is a text in the Bible, whatever you do, you know, do it with all your might. Do your best at it. And they certainly got that message. So they were honest, hardworking, God-fearing men, reliable, charitable. These brothers just must have had good parents. Okay, so that gives you enough, your coverage of the first two and my coverage of the second. I'm really pleased with how you dug into the doctor's description and really pulled some things out of there. Good for you. So you have a quiz on these tomorrow, and I want you to write some of their characteristics down. And anyone who can write down a characteristic that's inferred instead of one that's just, you know, like for example, the wife of Bath, she must have been somewhat flirty and liked men. She had to have liked men. She's been married 5 times, and that there's evidence that she did because she was married 5 times. And she loved making matches, so she herself was probably somewhat flirty. And so when you write down things that are inferred, that helps me see that you're really digging into the text and using your own insight to pull out what you can. So that's it for today on these characters.